right, so maybe we should dive right in. I'm going to call the meeting to order at 7:32 p.m. And I'm going to do a roll call just to have for the record who all is here. So let's see. Linda Ferrari, can you just say that you're here?
Here.
Okay. Barbara Morse.
Yep, here.
Great. John Cooley.
Here.
Ann Sussman.
Here.
Great. Nicole Hammond.
Here.
Great. And Greg Dorothy.
I'm here.
Awesome. Cool. Okay, great. Here we go. So let's see. I am going to share our agenda.
Susan, did you forget Anna?
Oh, I
Here.
did forget Anna. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Yes, Anna, are you here?
And you're here.
And I'm here too. Phew, okay. Here we go. Let's see. I'm going to share our agenda here if this will all cooperate with me, which I think it will. Here we go. All right. Awesome. So what we have going on tonight is approving minutes, and we actually have two sets of minutes to approve. After I go through like what we're expecting to cover tonight, maybe I'll loop back and check with Elizabeth and Linda if it makes sense for us to try and cover our housekeeping items, like approving the minutes after they do their presentation about the MBTA Communities Act. It might just be respectful to their time in case they were planning on rolling off early from the meeting. But at any rate, so we do need to approve two sets of minutes. Looks like we've got a full house in terms of our membership, so that's awesome. I know that Allison is making her way through select board approval, and Greg just got sworn in since the last time we met, so that's amazing. I'm excited about that. And then we're going to be hearing from Linda Miller, who's chair of the planning board, and Elizabeth Hughes, our town planner, about the MBTA Communities Act. And this is a warrant article on the town meeting warrant coming up later on in April. And we should think about whether we want to take a position on this warrant article. Maybe some of you have been to town meeting and experienced where sometimes a warrant article will be submitted, and then there will be other town committees who will say, we endorse, we recommend positive action on this warrant article, or something to that effect, or we choose to be neutral, or we did not take a position. And so we have the opportunity as kind of an adjunct committee to the planning board to take a position if we would like to on the warrant article. So I think it would be great for us to learn more about it, and then after Linda and Elizabeth present to us, have a bit of a discussion on what we want to do. And then the other things are kind of housekeeping that are at the end of this. So let me loop back to the beginning. Linda and Elizabeth, is it helpful to you all to go now, and then we'll do our housekeeping afterwards? So we'll flip the agenda a little bit.
That sounds good. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Why don't we do that then? I'm going to stop sharing because I'm thinking you all may have some slides to share.
I think Elizabeth is going to work the slides. I'm going to sort of begin the discussion, and then sort of turn things over when they get to the gory details over to Elizabeth. So yeah, so
do you just see the slides, or
yeah, just the slides.
You just see one slide?
Yeah.
Okay, so what I see is one slide, the next slide, the notes. So I just wanted to make sure you're only seeing the one slide. Okay.
Yeah, that's what I'm seeing too. Yeah,
okay.
Just the one slide.
Okay, so good evening, everybody. I've met a number of you who are on the committee, so it's fun to see everyone all together in action. So thank you for the invitation to be here, and we will try and walk through the highlights of the multifamily housing overlay district under the MBTA Communities Act. In 2020, the state passed the MBTA Communities Multifamily Housing Act to solve our regional housing shortage, or at least to help alleviate it. And new local zoning to reduce constraints placed on construction of multifamily housing is required across towns and cities in most areas of Eastern Massachusetts. If you want to go to the next slide. And this is just a picture to familiarize everybody with what multifamily zoning has done or not done in Concord. And this is some examples of multifamily housing. But again, moving to the next slide, you might not be aware of the fact that presently, under our current zoning bylaw, no multifamily housing can be built by right in Concord today. Some of those existing homes that we looked at might be the result of a 40B permit that bypassed our housing. Some are in non-conforming lots. Those are homes that were built prior to our current regulations or bylaws. Or they may be limited to some of the two-family structures that have been built in the Residence C zoning districts, which the two-family do require a special permit review by the planning board. So the basic requirements of the law, which is on the next slide, is that we are required to add new zoning to at least 50 acres in town. At least 1/2 of those 50 acres must be located within half a mile of a commuter rail station. And on average, those acres must have a density, again, zoned for 15 units or more per acre. You cannot have any age or unit size restrictions imposed by the town. And they should be housing that can accommodate or be suitable for families with children. Finally, those 50 acres based on density and area could, in theory, contain at least 1,094 multifamily units based on a pretty elaborate compliance model that the state demands that we comply with. There, of course, is no requirement that private property owners develop or redevelop any of the properties in the district. They can continue to enjoy the prior existing zoning as it were. And the new zoning is really an overlay. And by right, homes can be built, but we can also impose some conditions, though the building itself can't be rejected outright. If we go to the next slide, you'll see that there are a number of benefits to Concord from compliance. Most of them have to do in terms of the carrot versus the stick, with Concord being able to remain eligible for infrastructure and sustainability funding, as well additional funding opportunities that are used by various town departments for studies. It's important to note what is not required by the law. The law doesn't require housing to be built, which I said before, but only that it be zoned for. It doesn't require communities to pay upfront for new infrastructure to anticipate the housing development. And it doesn't override certain key land protection statutes, particularly things protecting the wetlands or historic preservation. And it's important to note that this is a very separate law from the laws that are involved in the 40B projects, and in terms of the new legislation that would allow MCI Concord possibly to be returned to the town from state ownership. So why does the MBT overlay district meet our town goals? Clearly, the MBTA is reflected in our Concord housing production plan and the town's long-term plan. Housing with greater density located near transit provides options for more people to afford living in Concord. It can allow us to continue a Concord lifestyle that's convenient and attractive, and a place to live, work, and play in one location. Can help us meet our environmental needs and sustainability goals, supports pedestrian and cyclists rather than being auto-centric, can provide more accessible customers to retailers and services in our town centers, and also improve residents' health outcomes, particularly with having more streets that can be accessed that are walkable. So we engaged almost a year ago in a fairly intensive outreach program to find out really what the community felt would be appropriate in terms of satisfying this legislation. And the next slide will show some of the numbers of meetings that we had. We also had a programming on CCTV. We had a notify me email opt-in to let everybody know and get notice of these events. And also there's been a medallion on the town's homepage that you can click through to get more information on the details of the proposal and the legislation. And with that, there's a few pictures. We did some pinning exercises with various meetings. We did an online survey where we got a lot of good feedback again from the community. And what we found were a number of principles that have guided the location of the district. We were informed that people wanted as much as possible of the location to be within that half-mile radius of the commuter rail stations. People were focused on maintaining the existing characteristics of the town, including especially building height and other things like setbacks. People wanted to avoid loading new housing onto well-developed neighborhoods that they cherished. And they were hoping that we could find additional areas that would have potential for new housing where the multifamily housing could be placed. They wanted us to maintain local control if possible, and balance capacity evenly as best we could between Concord Center and West Concord rail stations. And finally, there was a preference that we include affordable housing, which is something that requires a separate examination by the state. So now I'm going to turn this over to Elizabeth, who can walk us through the results and the overlay map itself.
Great. So after all of that public engagement and discussion, the warrant article put forth identifies 5 sub-districts, and I'll go through each one. We have what we're calling sub-district 1, which is the called Lower Lowell Road and Keyes Road. It includes Millbrook Terry, Concord Market, Walgreens, 100 Keyes Road, and then 100 Main Street. That's that office building that faces Main Street. The next district is just up the road, includes Concord Oil, what was Kevin's Automotive, Concord Lumber, and then just the 3 residential structures to the left of Concord Oil. Some people have asked, why include those residential structures? Because the guidelines issued by the state, the minimum acreage for a district is 5 acres. So that was part of the reason why. The third sub-district is down Sudbury Road, Thoreau Street, includes gas station, Thoreau Gardens, I forgot I have to change this map. Note to myself, I gotta change the map before town meeting. Most of these, units in this area are already duplexes. But so again, this district, is, 5.9 acres. Most of the redevelopment, potential, could be Thoreau Gardens if that were to, ever be redeveloped. The analysis that, was conducted as part of the compliance modeling, I think there's currently 34, units there. Under the MBTA communities zoning, it could possibly maybe go up to about 36. So it's, a little bit different, but not entirely that much. Subdistrict 4 is, this is where Junction Village, was going to be, located, the land owned by the Concord Housing Development Corporation. This is 68 Commonwealth Ave, the Concord Park Assisted Living Facility. And then this is the approximate 10 acres, where the comprehensive permit Novo Riverside Commons is being proposed. And the last district is Elm Street and Route 2 at Baker Ave Extension. Includes what was Asian Gourmet, what was Paparazzi, the Best Western Hotel, the little gas station, and then there's a little office building here. And those are the 5 districts. But if you want me to continue, Linda?
Could you just go back to sub-district 4, please? I just want to look at that.
Yeah, I think this would be a good place to see if the questions. Yeah.
Did you have a question, John?
No, I'm just looking at the land.
It looks like Anna has a question.
I do. My question was, you said that the 40B projects at Baker Avenue and Forest Ridge were different, but this one is where the Baker Avenue is. How are they different?
So how is MBTA communities different than a comprehensive permit?
Well, no, I guess what I'm asking is, why would the Baker Avenue development not qualify for the type of thing that they're looking for in MBTA communities?
Primarily because one, there's other zoning waivers that are required to build the Baker Ave Novo project. They would still need a waiver through a comprehensive permit for height. They would still need a waiver for the level of density that they're proposing. So that's part of the reason they would still need to go for a comprehensive permit to do the project they're proposing, and not just a smaller by right multifamily project.
And is the issue, this is a really basic question, but is the issue that if the zoning is changed and a developer comes in and says, I would like to do this, then the town cannot say no? Is that the sort of, like you explained the advantages to Concord, but is the disadvantage that it may take away a little bit of our ability to say no to things?
Part of the zoning bylaw that's being proposed, people would still be required to get site plan approval. So there still would be an opportunity through the planning board's public hearing process to similar to what they do now. So they would review the layout of the project, vehicle pedestrian safety, where driveways are located. The planning board can condition, if there's impacts to, traffic or the MBTA communities doesn't require the town to upgrade any of its infrastructure or its services. So if a roadway needed to be, modified to accommodate a project, that's the developer would still have to do that, still have to go through the process to mitigate through conditions of approvals those impacts. That's different than a comprehensive permit. So there's no ability through site plan approval to just outright deny something if it meets the requirements. And maybe people just don't like it. But the planning board through the public hearing process can condition the project to basically mitigate any impacts, require the applicant to amend their project design to mitigate those impacts, and look at landscaping and stormwater and lighting and all of those different site elements through that process.
Okay.
But right now, there is no multifamily being built in Concord, other than the 40Bs, which go through a different route, because everything is zoned single family. So it just, you can't even,
Propose it.
propose it. Yeah. It's all denied but before you even get there, because if it's not in the zoning as allowed, then it's denied.
Okay.
But it is, by its definition, it's considered, by right. But if somebody were to, propose something and the fire department said, absolutely not, this is such a public health safety, then the planning board would come back to them and say, you need to modify this in an appropriate way to address these issues and concerns that the fire department weighs. Public health and safety is probably one of the ways that a community or a board can deny a site plan, even if it's by right. So generally, what happens during that review process, there's here's issues and concerns that have been identified, and the developer goes back and tries to address those through redesign, or there may be conditions that need to be met.
Thank you.
Allison, do you want to ask your questions?
Yeah, it's following on the same, understanding the what as of right means, because one of those has a river running right through it. So do the wetlands no build, 100 feet, like, does the as of right take away those prohibitions, or do they still have to meet NRC stuff?
So the zoning bylaw, all it does is it establishes one set of rules. You still have to meet all the other rules that the town of Concord has. So whether that's the wetlands bylaw, the fossil fuel free bylaw, the historic districts commission. So the public works commission. So every other bylaw or jurisdictional board or commission, they're still required to go through all of that process. There's no waiver provision, which is the other difference with a comprehensive permit.
Also, within the MBTA communities law, there's a long list of what's called excluded land that would not, if we included it, it wouldn't be considered buildable. So that would include any wetlands, any water that is any uh, um, any land that is near wells for the town, or any water sources for the town, any conservation land, any educational institutions, museums, prisons, or land that's used for certain traditional uses, like cemeteries. So there's a very long list before we could even pick the locations of areas that were excluded for a variety of, community uses to even be considered.
Barbara, do you have a question?
I do. If we think back again to the Baker Ave proposed area, so with the understanding that there may very likely be another big development there, is my understanding that somewhere in that, is it 5 acres? I've lost track already. There is another place where one thinks you could build something other than a single family home? Do you understand what I'm asking? No.
Not really.
Okay, so it is anticipated that there's already going to be a good sized development in the area off of Baker Ave,
Yeah.
correct?
Mhm.
But that's now also included in MBTA communities as a potential site for additional multifamily housing.
So part of the whole MBTA communities exercise is the exercise in process, and the guidelines that the state has developed based on the actual law under Chapter 40A, Section 3A is only, I think, 6 or 8 sentences. The guidelines that the state has developed through the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities is over 28 pages. So they are requiring that you zone for these areas, you develop the rules, you go through this very complicated compliance modeling through a geographic information system process, and document that if, just based on those rules for those areas, can you, potentially build 1,094 units. So the areas that get zoned and the zoning, the rules that go with those areas, all of that goes into this compliance model. And based on the 5 sub-districts, we need a total of, we're mandated to have a total of 50 acres, and 50% of that has to be within the half-mile radius of the train stations. And if nothing was there, under that zoning, by right, you could build 1,094 units. That's all the community has to do. There's no
the key
mandate to build,
if there's nothing there.
assuming that there's nothing there.
Oh, interesting. Interesting. Okay, I
So
got it.
there's no mandate to build.
Gotcha.
You
Yep.
just have to put, the areas and the rules. So, that's in some communities, they're, flat out no, that would be Milton. And some communities are,
maybe.
hey, we have this area that's ripe for redevelopment, and we really want to try and, it's within walking distance of the train. We really want to, revitalize that area, and they have looked at that. What is being presented to town meeting, there are some areas that, have some potential, but it's still a private property matter.
Mhm.
That property owner may not wish to do anything. And there's no requirement that anybody choose, as a property owner, choose to build something under MBTA community. They could build something under the base zoning, what's there by right already. Does that
So
answer your question?
I think so. So there could be potential, not taking necessarily into account what may or may not be on that land currently.
Exactly.
Correct.
Okay, okay.
And
thank you.
and then it also doesn't take into account this compliance model,
Mhm.
doesn't take into account the existing infrastructure that might have to be improved. Doesn't
Right.
take into account, what's gonna be the driveways? Where's the trash gonna be located? What kind of amenities, does this development need? And
Right.
so, the current model that gets done looks at the permitted density, the setbacks, the height, the parking, and what if you have an open space requirement. And it just turns out this number and says, okay, this property right here is this many acres, you could do this many units. The likelihood that any property that goes through this compliance model could build the number of units that the model says is in my opinion, a little
Unlikely.
overestimated.
I think, and from talking to a lot of other people in town, I think people have been under the impression that it was going to take only open space, that is to say, property that currently doesn't have anything else on it at all, and rezone those under the Community Act. But apparently that's not necessary. Gotcha.
No.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thanks, Elizabeth.
Oh. Right.
I'll call on myself. So the part that is in West Concord is the by Baker Ave, basically. It's that L-shaped piece by Baker Ave. Is it true that there's one portion of that L, so there's a certain portion of the L that's already probably down the path with the Novo development occupying that piece of land. And then there's another spot, I believe, that has been promised as affordable housing because the state gave it to Concord for like $1 or something like that, with the condition that it would either be used for open space or affordable housing. Is that the 6X parcel that I'm seeing here on the
Yeah,
diagram?
so that's the lot owned by the Concord Housing Development Corporation.
Got it. Okay. And so that's already kind of like got its own conditions that are in place that this zoning would not necessarily supplant those conditions.
It does not.
Okay. It just, yeah, the zoning overlays that in a way.
Well, so those conditions are actually conditions placed on the transfer of those property and are
Okay.
part of that deed transfer. Zoning does not override anything that's a restriction placed on a property through the deed, or in this case, the transfer. So, that's still in place.
Okay.
But, if putting aside the whole MCI Concord conversation, if the Concord Housing Development Corporation, should this warrant article pass, they have another option to move forward to look at how to develop the property under, a new set of rules. Junction Village, the assisted living facility, is not a permitted use in this zone district. That's why it went through a comprehensive permit. So, this just gives them another, we give them another option to look at.
Okay. And then I do have just one more question related to this, and we can go to Anna. So the shaded part that looks like it's identified as part of MBTA communities, it does go right up to the waterway. And is that just kind of like because the graphic design is that way? Because it could seem to some people that you're able to build right up to, what is that, like Neshoba Brook or something, where you were saying before that all those regulations related to wetlands and waterways would still be in place for MBTA communities.
So the overlay district is based on parcel boundaries.
Okay.
So the boundary of this property, actually, I think it goes along here. So this is just the parcel boundary. And then the through GIS, the water gets overlaid. So if I were to bring up the actual GIS map and not show the river, it's just going to show you the parcel boundary between 68 and 292. So the development of this property would still have to meet 200-foot Rivers Protection Act, would still, be subject to the Wetlands Protection Act and the town's, wetland bylaw. But zoning works off just parcel boundaries. And in some of the zone districts, when they were established, 100 feet from the center line of, of this roadway, and it goes in 100 feet. And so, but today, a lot of the the zoning boundaries are based on parcel lines.
Got it. Okay. Anna.
Yeah, I was wondering how the MCI news affects this, because it looks like the on the left-hand side of those blue areas is MCI land. Is it too late to think about including that land in this whole thing? Or like, do we have to make a decision for the state before we can think about the MCI land?
They're completely separate. So the MCI land, because it's state owned,
They own still, yeah.
still can't be included
Okay.
in the MBTA. Federal, state, and municipal land are part of excluded lands. So we couldn't make it part of the overlay.
Linda Ferrari.
Elizabeth, you mentioned the infrastructure, and can you guys hear me? I know my computer's a little soft. You mentioned infrastructure. How should we be thinking about, like, when people go to town meeting and are voting on this, the infrastructure implications? Because I've read some articles that are saying that the lack of these communities' ability to have wastewater treatment plants or other infrastructure could be the downfall of this MBTA Communities Act. So how should the residents, including all of us, be thinking about that if we're, voting yes on this? How do we sort of weigh that factor?
So whenever town meeting passes any zoning bylaw amendment, all zoning does is establishes the rules for land use. And so it's just laying the groundwork for, the rules on, what are the permitted uses, and if you have this use, what are your setbacks going to be? What's the density? And it does not, override any, other bylaw, and it doesn't override any other process that a community goes through when it looks at its infrastructure and looks to, manage that infrastructure and manage the improvements of that infrastructure. So, if this were to pass, and we'll take the Junction Village parcel, for example, owned by the Concord Housing Development Corporation. And they come in and they say, we, under the zoning, we can build, this type of project, this density, and, to make it work, we want to connect to town sewer. The planning board can go through site plan approval and look at, how it's laid out and its neighborhood compatibility, and make sure it's got the parking and the landscaping. And then the planning board does not have the jurisdiction to tell the Public Works Commission, you have to extend sewer to this property. Public Works Commission has that jurisdiction, and they look at the current infrastructure, they look at the current capacity of the wastewater treatment plant. And, let's say, the town's at capacity, the Public Works Commission in their, their due diligence and their duty is you have a site plan, it got approved, there's a condition that you need approval from the Public Works Commission to be able to extend that sewer. And the Public Works Commission, would say, sorry, not right now. Or this is the 5-year plan to do updates to the wastewater treatment plant. And then at that time, we can look into that. Or for some projects, a lot of projects, it's going to have, we'll take the Novo Riverside comprehensive permit. They've had a traffic engineer, provide a traffic analysis and study. The Board of Appeals had their own consulting traffic engineer look at it and confirm, okay, yes, that project's gonna, have some incremental increase to Baker Ave and Main Street, but it is not, it's not such a major increase where the developer needs to pay for the whole redesign of that whole entire intersection. But there's an incremental cost. So, the applicant is providing $100,000 towards that complete redesign that Concord Public Works Engineering has already started to go through that redesign process. So I don't know, does that answer your question?
It does. I just think that there's future implications that I think maybe taxpayers of the town might want to understand what, we might need to do, or how that might impact their own
So
situation.
passing the zoning doesn't have any implication.
Yeah, I get that. I just, I understand that all we're doing is we're changing the zoning and we're allowing this by right. And as you said, we're not saying anything's going to be built tomorrow, but it seems like some other things I'm hearing that are happening in the town where a decision has been made and maybe the implications of that haven't maybe been thought through. Of some of the stuff I'm hearing about solar, for example. I'm just trying to understand how this all kind of fits together in a bigger picture. That's all.
Right. And do remember that ultimately, if there is housing built, there will be residents and they will be taxpayers as well. So it's not,
Yeah, it expands the tax base.
it's not a free lunch for,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Let's see. We can go to Ann Sussman. Go ahead, Ann.
Oh, hi. So I realize it's already 8:15, but so is it appropriate for us to support this? Can we write a note that we support the MBTA Communities Act, or is that useful for us to do for the town? I would argue that updating the zoning this way, it's a first step and it's something we need to do.
So I think,
Well,
yeah, as we continue to talk through some of these questions, I think ultimately it'll be a question to our committee. Would we like to officially say that we're taking a position, positively, neutrally, negatively, etc., that would then be shared at town meeting when this warrant article is introduced? So yes, you're right, Anne. There's an opportunity for us to take a position. I don't think we necessarily have to write a letter. It would be more like taking a vote and then conveying that vote to Linda Miller and Elizabeth. Am I right in saying that, Linda and Elizabeth, that it's basically a vote and then our statement of what our position is?
Yes, but actually, that vote and that statement would be provided to the town moderator.
Got it.
And the town moderator at town meeting can just, read the statement.
Got it. Okay. So they'll stand up and say like, this, that, and the other committee are,
Yes,
whatever the position is,
Yes.
this, that, and the other committee, this is their position. So that information will be shared and then the discussion amongst everyone will kick off. I think that's the way I've seen
Yes.
it happen before.
Well, I know this is complicated, but my position is just to throw it out there is I'm very much in support of it.
Okay, yeah, thank you for sharing that. Let's see, I think didn't we have one more question? I was seeing someone's hand up, so I don't want to cut off.
Barbara, I think.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it was really just a comment that I think that the vote on this zoning change, unfortunately for Concord, came at the same time that we're dealing with a couple of 40B applications, and that people have combined the two in their minds and now think that they are similar in certain ways. And so whatever you can do to separate those out and help, I mean, your statement, Elizabeth, that this doesn't actually require anything in particular to happen necessarily. And that you didn't go looking for spots of open land where we could suddenly put additional housing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I think if we can try and help people understand the differences between those two things. When I first started serving on town committees, I went to a zoning board meeting, a hearing of some kind, and my thought at the time was, oh, please, please never put me on the zoning board. The minutia of detail that's required to understand how zoning works is really complicated. And I think that the challenge is to try and, particularly at town meeting, if not before, to try and help people understand these are vastly different kinds of things that we're talking about.
Thank you for the feedback.
John Cooley, go ahead. You may be on mute.
no,
Oh, he's reconnecting to his audio.
Wasn't letting me unmute myself. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
So a comment and then a question. So, I think I understand that, obviously there's no requirement or plan to build anything immediately, but this is, as far as I can understand, a permanent or semi-permanent change to the zoning bylaws. So I think we should, it's permanent. So I think we should keep in mind whether you're, pro or against multifamily housing in these areas, keep in mind that this is a long-term consideration. So even if there's a building being built in one of these plots of land today, in the future, it could be torn down and it could be redeveloped differently. For example, maybe a private property owner has no intentions of selling their house in the next 50 years, but maybe in 60 years they do, for example. So I think we should keep that in mind as sort of like where the risk center lies. It's a very long-term consideration. And then, if you consider this to be sort of a concession on the town's part, I think it's important for people to understand what we're getting. So it's not clear to me yet is the value of the sort of pros that you outlined at the beginning, sort of access to Massachusetts infrastructure funding, continued access to that. And there was another bullet point, but what is sort of the magnitude of value of those things? And are there other sort of positives that we get in exchange for the concession that we're making?
So currently, in the actual law 3A, the slide Linda brought up regarding being eligible, just straight out being eligible for Mass Works. So if the town in the future, near future, is looking at developing a new water treatment facility, we'll have to do upgrades to the town's wastewater facility or any major roadway improvement project all of those projects are eligible for MassWorks funding, which is millions of dollars. And then so far now, I think it's now up to like 15 different grant programs where compliance with MBTA communities is now one of the criteria, the selection criteria for these 15 or so different grant programs, which the town of Concord has received funding through quite a few of them. And I imagine that eventually what most planners think is that the governor is just going to make MBTA community compliance criteria for any housing or transportation grant funding. There's already been discussions that compliance will be part of being the fossil fuel free demonstration program. The Secretary of Transportation has already talked about it being a criteria for other transportation funding, which currently the Assabet River Bridge and Trail is on the list of projects for the TIP. It's at $8 to $10 million. It's not programmed in a year yet, because it has to be at 25% design, but it's been vetted by the project review committee, PRC, and it's eligible to be programmed. So there's a lot of there's a lot at stake financially that the town wouldn't be able to go after, and that's just we're only talking, it's only been 2 years since this started happening. So I don't know what else is going to happen. I mean, we're all kind of sitting and waiting to see what's going to happen with Milton and the lawsuit for the town of Milton for not being refusing to be in compliance. So I mean, it's early. I can't say exactly all the things that are could be ramifications, but my fear right now is that compliance is somehow somebody's going to wrap that into the whole MCI Concord disposition, and that would really be too bad.
I'll call on myself again. Do we know what towns have had their town meetings to, approve this, or I guess, vote on their solutions? I know we've heard a lot about Milton because they're the ones who decided not to, but is Concord one of the first ones who's going through the town meeting process this spring, or have there been other towns who have already taken their votes?
There are quite a few, a growing number. So Arlington, I believe it's Arlington, Salem, and Lexington actually voted and have been found to be compliant, and so they're fully through with the process. I believe that other than Milton, all of the other initial 12 towns that had to vote by December of 2023, so all of the other towns voted affirmatively for it. I also believe that Lincoln just recently voted positively. I think Wellesley just was a positive town meeting. I know there are a handful of others. Those are the two that I remember. I think just the past week. So I don't believe, I think at one point last year, Littleton turned it down, but they are scheduled for another town meeting. And I'm not aware of any other towns that have voted negatively.
Thank you for that. Anne, go ahead.
I'm just going to say I'm really supporting it. I think it's coming a little late. I'm part of the baby boom generation, and we're called the generation that doesn't have the housing we need. There's no place for us to move as we get older. There's not the housing for us. There's not the transit for us. It's going to be a disaster. There's 70 million people. We're called the silver tsunami. Never before have so many Americans been aging, and the country just isn't prepared, doesn't know what to do. So this is one way to make a step. It's also important for the younger generation. They're having a much harder time getting into real estate than ever before. So it's funny, not to get into my personal history, but when my dad bought his house in Lexington 50 years ago, it was $16,000. And his salary was $16,000. And in that time, you know, I've seen in my generation how the middle class has just been completely eviscerated. And the opportunities my parents had, we just don't have. And our children, it's going to be so much harder for our children in the next generation. So this is a step that I think we have to take. In Massachusetts too, when you look at the rest of the country, as you know, I'm sure you've seen the maps, we have some of the highest housing prices in the country. We're not quite where San Francisco is, but I think we're the state with the top five states with the top housing, and that's going to hurt us all. So I think we have to do it, and I don't think there's a lot of time. I really think time isn't on our side.
But I think another important thing to note is that, I mean, Concord does say that we want to have a diversity of housing according to all the different like envision plans and bridge to 2030 and all of that. Like I feel like what I read is that people do want a diversity of housing. And this kind of forces our hand on it to a certain extent, but it's not necessarily proposing something that we haven't already talked about amongst, you know, everyone in Concord. So it's just something to keep in mind. John, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, one viewpoint is we're making sort of a concession, and so we should get something in return. The other viewpoint would be we actually want multifamily housing. If we actually want multifamily housing, you know, the way that I view the overlay proposal is we're not really agree. I mean, I don't know. I think the sense of that is like there's that land isn't necessarily immediately developable, right? And one of the plots of land is already planned for something else. Some of it's owned by private. So another viewpoint would be we should actually lean into a more aggressive overlay if we really want multifamily housing in the near term. And to me, it seems like the proposal is sort of a middle ground somewhere in there.
So that's exactly what it is. And because that's, this is something new, this is something different. It is very, it's very difficult to understand. Linda and I have been living this since June, and there's still new things coming up. So and that's part of the job that the planning board has been doing is, listening to all these different groups and all the different questions and trying to find a consensus for something to take to town meeting that, meets the requirements, is reasonable, that people can, understand, and that it can pass. And so you kind of, take your, step forward, and then from there, you can look at different options and different ideas. But that, that cost benefit and getting something that people can understand and getting something that passed is something that the planning board does with almost every single zoning bylaw amendment, except for the housekeeping amendment that's on the warrant this year. Please, just if you have a question, just call me. That's the first time we've ever had 15-page article in the warrant. So, but.
Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions. I do
Well-
see a member of the public, so let me just look and see if, well, first of all, Nicole, we haven't heard from you yet tonight, and if you're comfortable, if you have any questions or if you wanted to comments, and I'll throw the same thing out to Greg. I'd love to hear from you both as to what your reactions to this are.
I
Oh,
have a lot to take in. I also watched the video earlier today that you gave us, and I want to understand it a little better. It seems to me that it's more of the possibility of extra housing. It's neither yes or no. It is allowing for the possibility.
That's what zoning is, I think, right? I think Elizabeth and Linda have said that over and over again. That's what zoning is. It's a possibility, not something being built. But I don't know, you guys can expound on that if you know, you want to.
And it seems to me like West Concord might have the most open land in comparison to the other sections in Concord. Even though some of it has already been potentially spoken for.
I think there's, and again, you know, it's not just open, you know, open land, you know, each of the areas in Concord has, you know, some type of, it's either development potential or redevelopment potential. You know, originally, you know, the planning board had looked at where Crosby's is. And that was kind of one of those balancing acts when you get public input that under, you know, the MBTA guidelines, you're talking about by right multifamily. So the reaction is that the Thoreau Business District is, you know, it's one of those vital village districts, and that, you know, cost benefit and that analysis that happens, it wasn't worth having, you know, the potential for just by right multifamily and there being no commercial, and that is one of those scenarios that the planning board looks at when they look at any zoning bylaw amendment, is what are the unintended consequences, and are, you know, can you address those unintended consequences, or in this case, is that unintended consequence not worth it? So you know, so the planning board did not include Crosby's, but instead will move forward and look at amending the current zoning in a fashion that may allow for mixed use development, you know, potential, but not just by right multifamily, which is what would have been required, you know, if it was under the MBTA communities overlay.
Greg, go ahead.
So, you know, as I've been listening and everything else here, I've obviously, you know, I wanted to take it in first because I've read up on Milton and what they're going through. I've seen all the other towns that are kind of have already gone ahead and like voted this through. And, you know, it's kind of one of those like necessary evils, I guess you could call it in some sense of the word. And so just like Anne, I you know, I thought about it and I was like, look, we need this. It is something that just needs to happen. And so like, there really wasn't going to be much questions from me based on what I had reviewed, but I mean, I'm behind it. I understand what needs to happen, you know, and I certainly don't want to see, with all the stuff we have going on in Concord right now between the 40Bs and the MCI and everything else, and not to mention ComAv and all those things, like, you know, I don't want to see us wound up in some litigation dealing with this as well. You know, I'd say, look, let's move forward with it. You know, I support it. It's not anything that was a surprise to me because I read about those other towns going through that. So yeah, I'm where I'm coming from in my standpoint, it's like, yes, like let's move it forward, you know. And a lot for the reasons, and what I thought about was a lot for the reasons of what Ann was saying, you know, the baby boomers, the future generations that are going to have a hard time being able to buy housing in this area, you know, and being able to get their foot in the door. You know, there's always that concern of how it will impact, you know, the school systems and stuff like that, but I'm sure the planning board and the zoning board have already thought about those things. Because the impact on our school district is huge. You know, if especially considering with the 40B that's going to be put in behind my house, and you know, the other one over on Baker Ave, you think about it, you're like, okay, how many more kids is that adding to the new middle school and all this other stuff? But no, outside of that, this is something, obviously, if we're going to push back on something, I would say this is not it. So.
Thanks for sharing that perspective. I do have, I guess, a follow-on question then for Elizabeth and Linda, and I know the whole how many kids is this going to add to the school system point is going to come up at town meeting, and probably you all are preparing for that. There's some sort of formula, I think, that gets used usually to say when you have a housing, development of a certain size, X% will end up being kids who enter the school system. Is some kind of approach like that going to be used to town meeting to explain what the effect is on the school system?
There is, what you've been seeing long-term actually is a decline, in all of these western suburbs, of, families moving in and with young kids. I mean, because of the economics. So it's hard to live here with young kids. And so there's been over the past 10 years, and it's projected, UMass has some very good demographic academic studies. It's projected to continue, that we will continue to actually have a decline in the school population. And then what you've seen is when there have been building of large units, you kind of go off of the trend line, but not above, but you're not really seeing a lot of growth, even with building the 40Bs. So we do have a letter from the superintendent, and have discussed things with her, and she has not expressed that there will be strain on the school system. Of course, they've been dealing with the Elm Street property as well. So, we have that. I think the expectation also is that for multifamily housing, generally the families tend to be smaller. You just don't see many, more than 3-bedroom multifamily units. So if you're thinking you might have, I think Novo is saying they might have for 200 units that they're building, there might be 100 students, and that's between high school, middle school, 3 elementary schools, and how many classes in each. It just doesn't, it doesn't move the dial in terms of having to add a lot of staff, or, much less facilities. But that's mostly what we've been hearing, and we do have some data to back that up that we can show at town meeting.
So again, but I kind of want to stress that there's no way to say how zoning is going to impact the schools, because again, there's no way to determine which property owner might want to do something and which property owner, what's the project going to look like. I can tell you that for Nathan Pratt, which is, Concord Muse, and then it was something else, and now I think it's Nathan Pratt. I can't remember off the top of my head. I think that project is a little over 300 units. There's 100 kids in the school system from that development of 300 and something. We're, the projects that are potential under MBTA communities, you're not talking about density of that level. Again, that would be like Novo. Even to get that density, you're talking about a comprehensive permit, which with the Novo project will be well above 10% for quite a while.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much for inviting us. This has really been one of the most fun conversations that we've had. And so we are glad that we're ending up with some really interesting, thoughtful ideas from everybody as well.
Before you all go, it looks like Linda Escobedo actually has her hand raised. Linda, go ahead.
Thanks very much, everyone. I just wanted Linda Escobedo, Select Board, but speaking for myself, although I am going to refer to the vote that was taken by the Select Board. The Select Board, and I've now had the opportunity to hear Elizabeth and Linda's presentation at a number of different committees that I'm like. I just want to compliment you on the excellent questions that you've asked. And I think, and also your awareness of what some of the community members are speaking about, because I think that's going to help us going into the town meeting. The select board has recommended affirmative action on this warrant article. And I would, I particularly appreciated John's question, not that I didn't appreciate everyone's questions, but I think that it is true, as Elizabeth commented, that just what we know in terms of various projects that Concord already has on the table, there are millions of dollars at stake, either state or federal, to match or be part of some of the projects. And we don't know, we're working, the select board and others in town are working closely, not only with our state representatives for legislation, but also putting together an MCI closure advisory group. And there are so many opportunities for Concord once that property is available to us that are important to our long-term viability. So there is a lot at stake. So thank you for your questions. And I just wanted you to be aware of the position that the select board's taken on this.
Thank you for sharing.
We also have, just to round that out, received support from the Housing Roundtable. All of the various housing groups have both written letters to the bridge and moderator to support this, and the Economic Vitality Committee has also supported the MBTA article. So yeah, so we, I think there are a lot of elements that meet a variety of needs across the town that we're moving forward with this. So thanks again for inviting us and for, again, a really robust conversation. Appreciate that. And we'll let you get back to the rest of your meeting and for your time.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thanks for being here. Okay, I know that we are rapidly approaching 9 o'clock. And so what I'd love to do is, well, okay. I think we should try to take a position on this. Maybe just kind of see what everyone thinks and see if it's viable to take a position, if we have any sort of unanimous or nearly unanimous opinions, and we'll just kind of see, and then that'll determine whether we're able to take a position or not. So I think there are certain people here who unfortunately can't quite vote on our committee yet, and that would include, I don't see Allison here anymore, but I think, Greg, you're still an associate member at this point, and so I don't think that you can vote, but we were super happy to hear your opinion. So because of that, the other folks on the committee are going to be the ones who participate in the voting that happens here. No, I do see Allison. So Allison, unfortunately, you can't vote yet either because you haven't made it to the select board approval process, but you will soon. So I guess I'll just go around kind of like in the order of who I see on my screen to ask what your thoughts are about whether you would vote to support this, or whether, like, you can say you're neutral, or if you don't think that you would support it. I'd just be interested to know. So I'm going to start actually with Anna, if that's okay. Anna, if you
Sure.
could share your opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I am generally in favor of this, and I think that, as everybody said, Massachusetts has a real problem, and every town has to do something to contribute. The one thing that gives me pause is that I feel like the parcels that have been identified in West Concord are significantly bigger and easier to develop, if only because there isn't a lot there. And for example, the one along Thoreau Street, if they redevelop that, it could only add 2 units. And then you've got the thing out by Concord Oil, which is smaller, and then this 10-acre parcel in West Concord. So I have a feeling that's going first. So that's my one concern, but the general principle, I think, is important, and I wouldn't think that that would stand in the way of my supporting the whole thing.
Thank you for sharing that. Linda Ferrari, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm in support of it as well. I mean, I think not only for the affordable housing reasons that have been mentioned today, but also because of the sustainability connection, right, between these more dense units and, you know, connection to the commuter rail and all public transportation. These are all, you know, highly integrated issues. So I think this isn't just about housing. This is about, you know, a more sustainable climate and achieving some of Concord's overall goals. So I am in support of this.
Okay, great. Barbara Morse, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm in support of it. I've come to a number of the other meetings, but I certainly have a clearer understanding that this is just allowing a process, and it may be that no development occurs on any of these.
Okay, and we already heard from you, so I'm going to assume that you're in support, and I'm going to go to John Cooley.
Yeah, I'm kind of similar with Anna and Linda. I think I'm generally in support of this, but I also have this pause about what is the total acreage comparison between West Concord and Concord Center, right? I actually didn't sum that up, but it seems to me that there's more allocated in West Concord than Concord Center. But I think I would still support this.
Okay, thank you. And Nicole Hammond, what do you think?
I need to understand it a little better. It's pretty complex. Like Barbara said, she went to a couple of different meetings, and I still, you know, it is, yes, of course, I agree with the whole concept of more affordable housing, absolutely. But is this the right overlay for Concord?
Okay, thank you. I would say my opinion is it looks like, especially for the West Concord parcels, a lot of that land is sort of spoken for in a way, in terms of like its outcome has either been decided or will soon be decided as regards to the Junction Village parcel and also the Novo parcel. So I think to myself, yes, we're going to get more housing in those places. We were on track to get more housing in those places, no matter if MBTA communities happened or not. And then the other parcels that are like, you know, where the old paparazzi was and otherwise in Concord, I don't have as much familiarity with them. And I was really more focused on what was happening in West Concord when I was thinking through my decision. So I would say I'm in support, and I do think our community needs more housing that's of varying sort of, you know, abilities to meet people's needs as they enter our community, age in our community, want to live and work in our community. So yeah, I'm in support. So I think what we could possibly do is take a vote and acknowledge that it sounds like Nicole wants to abstain, and I think that's totally fine. I realize this is a pretty complicated topic and they're not required to take a position on it. But I think it would be good for us to kind of just elevate our thoughts to, the planning board and our town planner. Well, it's going to be the town moderator who gets this, but does that sound like a reasonable course of action to everybody? To take a vote, and Nicole, are you comfortable abstaining, or are you feeling okay about this if we go ahead and vote and you decide to do something different?
I'm happy to abstain.
Okay. Oh, John, go ahead.
Just had a like process question. It's like, I wasn't actually aware that associate members don't vote. Is that true? Can we confirm that?
Yeah.
That is true. The only time associate members can vote is if your charge specifically states that if there is a lack of a quorum, and an associate member can be elevated to a voting member for that action. So currently, I believe only the Zoning Board of Appeals has that. I think the HDC is currently amending their charge to allow that. And I'm not sure if that's a provision in WCAG's charge or not. I'd have to look that up, but it's specific to the charge.
Okay.
And Greg will be moving into a full position anyway, and I think after town meeting happens. So I apologize if that was a surprise, Greg, and I would love to have you as a voting member, definitely. But it's just kind of the way things are with our committee. Okay, so I think I'm gonna make a motion that we take a vote in support of this warrant article, and I actually don't have the warrant article number, but maybe if you can come up with it. Elizabeth, do you know what it is?
Yeah, it's Article 34.
Article 34, okay. So I'm gonna make a motion that we take a vote to state our support for Article 34. Do I have a second?
I second.
Okay, thank you. So let's see, I guess we go around and we say how everyone votes, right? So, so Anna, do you vote in support of Article 34?
Yes.
Okay, Linda, do you vote in support of Article 34?
Yes.
Okay, Barbara, support of Article 34?
Yes.
Ann Sussman, vote support of Article 34.
Yes.
John Cooley, support of Article 34.
Yes.
Okay, and Nicole, I'll ask you officially for your vote or non-vote here. Nicole, do you support Article 34?
Abstain.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you everybody for all your great questions and your thoughtful conversation with Linda and Elizabeth. That was great. So I think let's move into minutes approval right now, which I know is a little bit sort of tedious, but hopefully we can get through this in a couple of minutes, and then we can I'm going to ask you guys a question about trying to meet again in person in May, so be thinking about that, but let's approve some minutes if you all don't mind.
Can I just have one quick question? So I'm a little confused. What are you going to say to the moderator then?
I think what we say is that we could say, I think that we voted unanimously with one abstention or something like that. I think I've heard that kind of thing be said before. Is that right, Elizabeth?
That's fine.
Okay, yeah. Great. Okay, so let me share minutes and we can talk about these. Let's see. Yes, okay. I did circulate these right before the meeting, and it's okay if you didn't have a chance to look at them because it was like 20 minutes before. But at any rate, these are the minutes from our in-person meeting, and this was honestly like an amazing meeting for me because I haven't met with you all in person in, I don't know, over 2 years. So this was really cool. The folks present were all of these individuals, and you'll see my corrections here and stuff. I think what I'm going to do is like I'll correct as we go, and then I'll clean it up, and then I'll be sending it over to Heather Carey, who will post these as final minutes. So these were the committee members present, and I believe Allison Ailey, our prospective member, was there, and there was another member of the public that I think may have been Honora Weiner, but does anybody remember if it was her or
Yes.
not?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's was.
Okay, great. Question mark. Okay, so we all kind of gave our updates of different meetings we had attended recently, and it was, I think Barbara gave us a great update about attending the planning board and listening to what was then the update on 166 Com Ave. This is a really good summary, I thought, of that. Let's see. And then Anne asked some questions. Square, and then we noted that the 166 Com project had a lot of work that needs to happen, even if and when it gets approved. Okay, let's see. Greg Dorothy had talked about the 40B housing project at the Throw Campland, and at that point, I think there was going to be a walkthrough on March 19th, which Greg probably went through. I'd love to learn more about that, but we can't do it during this meeting. So Greg, I might just message you independently about that. And let's see. Yeah, so Greg was doing a bunch of analysis about 40Bs, which is
We
great.
just think we need to correct the spelling of the town of Stowe, Massachusetts does not have an E.
Oh, okay. Let's see. That was here, Stowe. Yeah, okay. Great. Okay, and then
Come on.
anything else on this section here about the 40B residents of the row? Okay, looks like Anna and Linda attended the Zoom session about the Route 2 corridor analysis. We had a good summary from them about that. Let's see, and then we did some housekeeping business. We reviewed minutes and approved those. That's great. I owe those to Heather Carey. And then we went through the design guidelines, which I'm going to get to in a second. And Allison Ailey's application was approved. I think Allison has 2 L's in her first name. Okay. Parking. Okay. And then this is the piece that I ended up adding from my own notes. All the other stuff was Anna Feldwig's very detailed notes about our conversation, but I tried to summarize the different themes that came out of our discussion about what we saw in the design guidelines that we wanted to potentially adjust. So some of these things were the illustrations of the architectural designs being in the right place. We were hoping that they could be more, I guess, aligned with the text that describes them in future versions of this, having a definitions section, illustrations, format the content to be bulleted, have more images, shorter, reduced by 50%, include a developer in the drafting process. I thought that was a really interesting, good one. Amping up the green and clean energy design part, and including guidelines related to mixed use development, since that may not have been really emphasized overly much in the guidelines when they were first written, but it seems like there's a lot that's being talked about related to mixed use development now. I think somebody had asked the question about our Acton's design guidelines, a good example for us. All right, and then this is like all the different feedback that you all had from reviewing different sections of the guidelines. Let's see.
I think we talked about the Swampscott, was it Swampscott model that you had sent as well?
Yeah, that was what was it called? Vernon Square. Oh, here I have it right here. Yeah, Vernon Square, Swampscott. Yeah.
That was particularly useful.
Okay. So maybe let's add that in. I'm gonna fix the spelling afterwards. I'm having like a lag on my computer keyboard.
I think why we referenced Acton is they have just a 4-page piece of paper. It's a double set of 2 pages, right? And so it's really easy to look through and you see instantly little stamp size images of what they want things to look like. It's just really
Okay.
concise. And so a concise version is really quickly because someone's not gonna sit down and read 80 pages. And
Yeah.
just the idea, it's intuitive, and that's what we want, I think. You know,
Okay, yeah, let's, we can all kind of like go and see if we can, I can look for, Acton's design guidelines
type
and.
it right online, just type it in.
Fine. Okay,
Yeah.
okay. So let's see, this I'm not sure actually what I meant. So Anna Feldwig, shorten the history of how the design guidelines came to be, mention documents that are
Yes, we
being
could,
referenced.
we
Okay.
could certainly link to it. I mean, it's sort of a narrative about the different documents and how they came to be, but it doesn't, we don't need all that history now, I think.
Okay,
So yes, link to would be fine.
okay. All right, so I'll change that. And then you had mentioned add a reference to the Bridge to 2030 document, emphasize introduction of more green space, feature water bodies, increase access by bike and foot traffic. The introduction should answer when this document when it should be reviewed and who's the audience, all these different things.
Since we have Elizabeth here, could we ask her? I can't see anybody, but do
Yeah.
people actually access this document as it exists now, or is it usually that someone tells them about it after the fact, after they've already started planning?
The Envision Concord document?
No, the current guidelines for West Concord. That was a question we wondered about.
It depends on the person.
Okay.
If it is, somebody more local who, understands and, comes to me first with an idea, then it's like, that's an interesting idea. You need to look at the design guidelines. But then, as we know, there's other proposals where, I get contacted and, oh, we want to talk to you about this. We have some preliminary ideas. And, then the plans I get are, they're not conceptual, and then, well, okay, did anybody look at the design guidelines? Oh, we didn't even know. And it's like, okay, well, you really need, I'm sure members of this committee can pinpoint examples of where somebody looked at the design guidelines and somebody didn't. So, we inform anybody who comes in about them. And, something that hasn't, we were hoping that, Aaron Stevens, who, was the public information officer, was part of the whole reason we were able to do some of the amazing things with the MBTA communities. We were going to try and have more, like with the Concord Bridge, like, have, little articles saying, so that's still something I'd like to do. So maybe, it's a quick little, just a little article to the bridge, hey, there's a lot happening in West Concord. Did you know, there's this, design guidelines. So, it's kind of like you can lead a horse to water. We can only tell people about them if I know about it.
Yeah. I mean, we were just thinking, in addition to making them easier to take in, we were wondering if there could be many different places that people would access them or run across them, or you know, be
Sure.
offered them. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, wherever, you know, if there's, you know, other places that you're, you know, thinking about, you know, yeah, we can definitely, you know, work on doing that as well.
Yeah, let's for sure work on that. Yeah, once we get these whipped into shape. Let's see, so Barbara did chapter 2, which was just a list of definitions, but I could swear that Barbara then covered another chapter as well, from this review.
Chapter 6 that we haven't gotten to yet.
Oh, okay, all right, that's totally fine then, all right. Chapter 3, Nicole did, let's see, it was general provisions for development, talking about the industrial versus business district. Found CAD illustrations that weren't easy to understand, descriptions of architectural detail, etc., varying wall depths, pervious and impervious paving. Nicole, is there anything that you want to add to this summary of what you found in chapter 3? Hopefully this isn't too broad brush.
I can't think of anything right now.
Okay. And then Linda did the first part of chapter 4, documented that visuals were a little too small, couldn't tell what they were really calling out, whether it was a good example or a bad example of something that was being talked about in the text. The industrial, business, and residential districts were described again. The vision for their transformation is laid out. We talked as a group about whether we should, in the design guidelines, suggest like Benjamin Moore historic colors for exterior colors of renovated and new buildings. And should we put more constraints on the design versus saying that West Concord accepts unique designs, or that it's already a quirky place and so we're open to different things. I think we talked a bit about, should we be more prescriptive with people? So that's where we left off on the review of the design guidelines. I took the second half of chapter 4, which we did start a little bit last time, but we can revisit it again the next time we meet, and then we can do additional chapters. It sounds like Barbara has chapter 6. I'm pretty sure that Greg was taking
Sorry,
chapter
Susan, just
7. Yeah, go ahead.
just on that industrial versus business.
Yeah.
My point was that it got very confusing because there were sections they were trying to discuss the industrial versus the business district. And is that distinction really one that we want to continue to discuss and you know, call out? That's kind of really what I was trying to say there. It's very difficult to process because they kept going back and forth between the business and the industrial, and I think we need to understand what our vision is for the future and whether that distinction should be carried out.
Yeah. Thank you for reminding us of that. Okay. And then we had gotten into just like a list of different meeting dates and whatever. So that's what happened in our last meeting. If I clean this up so that I don't have all my misspellings, are we okay to approve this set of meeting minutes and forward them on to the town for posting? Can I get a vote on that?
I vote to approve.
Right. I second that. Let's see. If
Did
the other
you
folks,
did you amend them during this discussion?
yes, I did. Oh, I should say
Yeah,
amend.
vote
Yes.
to approve as amended.
Yes. Okay. So
I
let's
vote
take,
to approve as amended.
yeah. Okay. All right. I also vote to approve as amended. Linda Ferrari, what say you?
Let's approve as amended.
Great.
Did somebody second the motion?
Maybe not the one that was amended because I said that after Ann seconded. So let's go back.
I'll second it.
Sorry. Okay, so the motion is somebody moves to accept the minutes
amendment.
as amended, and then somebody will second. And then
I
you
second.
all just can say yes or no.
So
Yes.
I moved, yes. So what I moved that we would accept the minutes as amended. Could I get a second on that?
I second it.
There you go. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So Linda, do you approve the minutes as amended?
Yes.
Barbara,
Yes.
Anne,
Yes.
Anna Feldwig,
Yes.
and John Cooley.
Abstain, I wasn't there.
Oh, that's right. Okay. So then I'll move to Nicole.
Yes.
Awesome. Okay. These are unanimously approved. Excellent. I'll send these off to the town. So I think the last thing was, so I wanted to remind you that we have a combined meeting with the planning board that's coming up for May 21st. Just wanted to make sure everyone's got that in their calendar. And I would like to suggest that maybe we do another in-person meeting for, oh, hold on, Elizabeth, yes.
No, no, go ahead and finish. I was gonna make just one comment, since, and it's not a problem, that John abstained from the minutes, but, this is another weird thing. You do not have to abstain from voting on minutes, even if you were not at the meeting. So that, just so you know, because sometimes you can be voting on a set of minutes and there's only a quorum of you, and you do need a quorum of members to approve minutes. But
Okay.
the town clerk, I've asked, and it's 100% true. You don't have to abstain even if you weren't at the minutes. I mean, weren't at the meeting.
That's crazy. All right, so let's see, let us talk about maybe trying to get together in person again for our next meeting. I'll just see like what everyone's availability is and if it would work. So our next meeting would be May 1st, which is a Wednesday, obviously, 7:30. Maybe if you guys want to just like raise your hands if you think you'd be available to attend in person. Okay, great. John, Linda, are you available? Linda, are you available to attend in person?
Calendar, yes.
You are, okay.
Yes.
Okay, so just to take into consideration, annual town meeting is scheduled for Monday and Tuesday night. And it would go to Wednesday if it needs to.
Oh, okay. So, gosh, like, does that mean that many committees would just move their meeting to the next week then to be ultra sure of not having it be canceled?
I mean, you can keep it, and then if at town meeting does, you would just cancel it and
Yes,
repost it
do.
48 for another 48 hours afterwards.
I think that's what we should do. Let's go for the first thing. If it doesn't work, do what Elizabeth said.
Okay. Since everyone's available to meet in person on that day, I feel like, yeah, let's go with that, and then we'll change it. Just be aware that it'll get changed if town meeting flops over into that May 1st date. So I will look for a spot for us to meet that hopefully enables hybrid participation, because I know we didn't have that last time. I'll look for that, but if we can't, then if for some reason I can't find anything, which I should be able to, we'll try Harvey Wheeler again, which did not have hybrid ability, but I think was a productive place for us to get together.
I could get you hybrid at the mill for no cost.
So yeah, okay, I appreciate that. Let me talk to you about that. And then I know I think there's like a building across the street from Harvey Wheeler that also has the availability to do Zoom.
Yeah, I'm not sure if Church Street is available, but I can tell you the second floor conference room at 141 Kais Road is open. And that does have hybrid capability.
Okay. Room at Highs, all right.
I have another question, just because I wasn't able to attend the meeting. Elizabeth, you probably were there. Did the planning board approve 166?
It did not. The planning board will be submitting a letter to the zoning board of appeals outlining still outstanding issues and concerns.
And when does this next zoning board of appeals meeting?
April 11th. I'm not sure if the planning board's recommendation letter is going to be finished by then, because I'm going to be out of town as of tomorrow morning and won't be back in the office till the 10th, but trying not to work on vacation, but
yeah.
Thank you for letting me know.
was-
Thank you for keeping up. People are asking, I don't know the answer, so thank you.
And their schedule may or may not allow for it anyway on the 11th.
Allow what?
To add that to the agenda on the 11th.
I think 166 Com Ave is on the Board of Appeals agenda for the 11th.
Oh, okay.
Well, no, give me a second.
Okay, so we're kind of significantly over and I want to release everyone back into their evening. So what you will get from me is the location of our in-person meeting in May. I will probably just assign some additional chapters in the design guidelines doc, if that's okay. We've got Barbara with 6 and Greg with 7 already, and then we'll just kind of like start over again with the additional chapters, just kind of going through and giving one per individual. I'm wondering if, like if Allison, would you be interested in participating in our design guidelines review and taking a chapter if I assign you one?
I'm interested. Will I be a member by then? And does that matter?
I think you will be wait, hold on, let's see. Yeah, I think you will be because select board is going to be voting on you at some point now during April, I would imagine. And then you would be a member as of May, I think.
All right, I'm happy to take a chapter. That's fine. Do I need to go to the select board or does that happen with me not there?
I think it happens without you there.
Okay,
Oh,
good.
Linda, you want to pipe up on that? You know.
I don't have all the information in front of me. I don't know if she has to be nominated first. And then appointed at a later meeting.
Who?
Allison Ailey, who is our.
Yes, she has to be nominated at one meeting and then appointed at a follow-up meeting. Greg also, he gets nominated and then appointed. So I think he's been nominated and then gets appointed. And Linda, since she's already appointed, she can just be, it would just be a reappointment. So Linda only needs one meeting at the select board, the others need 2.
So that may or may not go through the full appointment in the month of April, again, because of town meeting.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely time for nominations, and there may be a time for appointment.
Okay.
So Heather and I are working on our end with Shannon, the executive assistant, on making sure that those happen.
Okay. All right, so Allison, you might be off the hook on the design guidelines review. So there might be even more chapters though, even after you do the second round. So we'll see. You might be able to take one at some point. All right, and let's see. I think that is about it for this meeting. During our next meeting, I think it'd be great for Anna and we could both like give you an update on the meeting that we attended with the West Concord Junction Cultural District Committee. We're going to have a liaison with their committee who's going to start joining our meetings, I think coincidentally in May, so we might even get to meet that liaison during our meeting. And I think we had a nice kind of overview with them of the idea of the West Concord Greenway and learned a little bit about their projects. So we can talk to you a bit about that in May. Is that okay with you, Anna, if we talk about it with the committee in May?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, awesome. All right, so it's 9:21 and I make a motion that we adjourn this meeting tonight.
I second.
Thank you. All right. Can everyone just like raise their hands or say that like they approve of adjourning?
Aye.
All right, I'm seeing it's unanimous. So thanks everybody. Really appreciate you staying late and this was really productive. I will be in touch by email.